I almost caught a shiny Gigantamax Venusaur, but it didn't stay in the Pokeball.
Hello and welcome. My name's J.E. and with me today is my good old friend, Alexander Gonzalez.
Hello.
And please remember that we are not game devs. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you, Jay?
I'm doing all right. I mentioned earlier I was like kind of feeling unwell during this past week. I still have a headache. It's been like a week at this point. I've had this headache. It's not that bad right now, but
don't you get scared about the severity of illnesses and as you're getting older, how they're slightly taking longer and how your body isn't as resilient?
I think about that all the time where it's like, I didn't ever feel like this before. And all of a sudden I do now.
Like, I don't like how it's suddenly becoming noticeable how our bodies aren't as strong as they used to be.
But those are not the existential crises we are talking about.
Man, I hope I didn't
today.
bring down the mood. We're still fairly young.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. We are fairly young. Today, we are creating something new. Every week, we are not games. What? We are not game devs. We'll create a new video game. I can't read today. We'll create a new
that we have always wanted to play
video game idea that we have always wanted to play, but do not have any knowledge or know-how to create the wonderful experience that are video games. Today is my turn to present We Are Not Game Devs 111st IP. Let's begin with the basic concept, which is one you have heard before.
One that I have heard before.
In this game, what's going to happen? Actually, I don't know how it starts, but essentially you fall down and then you find like, it looks like a frame of a gun. Like it looks like if someone took a gun and then drew chalk around it and then took that out.
You mean a fossil?
No.
That's what it sounds like, right? Like a dirt piece that has a weapon imprint, right?
It looks like a mold, is what I'm saying.
Okay, but what's a mold but not a fossil for non-living things?
Well, I mean, it looks like the cookie cutter that makes the mold.
Oh, so it's like a metal frame. So if I wanted to cookie cut some machine guns into dough, this is what I'd use, but bigger, life size.
Yeah.
Okay, we got there.
But it's kind of like flat, and then you could see a little bit of wiring in there, right?
So there's not a lot of depth, and then it's a partially 3D with the wiring going through.
And so you land, you find.
What color is the metal?
I don't know, silver. Does that matter?
Okay. I don't know. Is it slightly rusted? Maybe a little orange? I mean, paint a picture for me.
I guess no, it's not.
I'm picturing red, yellow, and blue wires.
No, you find this fresh in like a factory floor that makes these things, right? And the wires are new, but they're kind of pulled out, and you could tell that this just fell off and it didn't get completely assembled. And you're in a hurry, like people are after you. Right? Or people or things are after you. And so you
hear a shout in the distance and then classic footsteps, a bunch of them running. Hey, over here.
I think you're already in a mid-chase sequence and then you fall down, you see this thing.
Maybe there's some flashing lights, maybe a siren on in the background going.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
Gotta set the scene.
You pick up this chassis, right? And then you see these weird thingy-mabobs. I don't know what to call them. Like little.
You see, this is why I'm here. So what do we see here?
You see like electronic like chips and like
chipsets,
like a flux capacitor like looking thing, but really really small, like a vacuum tube for like energy or whatever, right? And then so
it's like a power source.
Yeah, and then you pick these things up, and then you go to the nearest workbench, and then it like.
So there's probably a button on the flux capacitor, right? To get started?
No, because what happens, you get to the workbench and you sit down this chassis, you get your motherboard chip, you put it in, and then you put in the power source thing, you put it in.
At this point, we're knowing that this character knows what it is doing with this chassis and these parts. Yes. So it is aware of how these parts work.
I think so.
Okay.
And then once you put it in there, it's going to go into kind of like a mini game, but it's going to look more like a RPG skill tree-esque menu. but you get to choose
grids, lines.
What wire connects to the motherboard, what connects to the power source, right?
Gotcha. And now, so are there multiple wires, meaning that there's going to be multiple effects?
Yes.
That you can choose from?
Yes, but we'll get there eventually. Right now, you only have this one chip and this power source, and there's only 2 connectors for those, and then so you could only put
only one wire set that works right now.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe the other ones are frayed or damaged in another way.
And then from then on, this chassis now becomes your first gun, and you shoot it, and it's like just a basic blaster from like Star Wars. It just shoots like Han Solo's blaster, right? It's just one bullet, and it's pretty slow.
So just like little laser bullets.
Yeah. And so you go through the level doing all that. You collect multiple thingies and stuff from the ground.
Okay, so components and tools and materials.
Yeah. And so anyway, that just sets off how this game kind of begins. The whole premise of it is you're picking up different like chipsets, different power sources, different maybe.
So is this a different world that's maybe a lot more technological? And due to that, maybe there's these corporate cities where there's multiple factories in which you're able to find these chipsets and everything. However, when you're doing this and you blow into these factories, maybe workers run out because they're stuck and security comes after you because you're trying to steal their parts. And I'm thinking the workers are stuck like slaves because I don't think this factory would be a good factory.
I don't think so much that you are breaking in to steal something. I think what happened was you probably either work for this factory or you work for someone who owns this factory and you're there on a visit, and then you found something out, kind of like Abe's Oddworld. Not that they're eating your kind, but like you find something big, a big secret out, and you're like completely against it. But since you're against it, they want to kill you or whatever, so you have to run away. Something basic like that for now. But essentially, where this is all going is when you collect all these things, you have this wiring mechanic that lets you insert different chips. And like you said, now these chips will have different effects on them. Think kind of, I guess you wouldn't know, but in No Man's Sky, you could kind of do this where you could connect different wires to that and connect those wires to something else, and then that'll create a different effect. So essentially, using different chips with different power sources, with different, like maybe even hammers and triggers, whatever. I want it to be pretty variable, like different components that you're adding. And maybe how that looks like is you find upgrades to your chassis to like give you more components that you could add, and eventually you'll find like a long arm chassis and maybe like heavy chassis for like rocket launchers, and the long arm would be more for like snipers, rifles, and stuff like that, however you want to mod it. But essentially you're just going through this world, finding different chipsets and different power sources, different hammers, scopes, all that stuff.
It'd be pretty cool
wire in
if some of the upgrades could bounce between chassis. So like maybe one is like a clone upgrade, so that when you shoot one bullet, it actually clones into 3 bullets, and you could transfer that to a rocket launch if you want to use it for a rocket launcher, or you want to use it for a sniper rifle, what have you.
Yeah, that could be like a barrel mod that equips to multiple different types of guns. So it doesn't have to be like chassis locked. It could be maybe like power source locked. Like if you wanted to connect a barrel mod to a laser, that's totally fine. That splits. But if you want to connect it to a rocket launcher, it might have different effects. And if you wire it wrong, I do want it to backfire on you. And if you don't have an optimal wiring, then it also has less attack power if you wired in a weird way.
It makes me wonder if maybe it would be better. I don't know if I would ever suggest this normally, but to have durability. So that, for instance, if you try to do a barrel mod on a rocket launcher, you could do it, but it would only last maybe 5 rounds and then it would break. Whereas if it was more suited to a pistol, it would actually last hundreds of rounds.
That'd be crazy. Then this will be, I could imagine this will be more like Borderlands, where you're just getting mods constantly. And then I kind of like it. So then, yeah, you could do something super overpowered, like put a triple splitter on a rocket launcher. But yeah, it only breaks after 2 shots. So you only get 6 bullets total.
Yeah.
Instead of maybe normally the rocket launcher shoots 6 regular bullets anyway or something like that.
Yeah. Usually with durability, I get pretty upset when I get my favorite weapons taken away. But I think in this instance, the curiosity would probably kill me, and I'd want to find out what my super OP weapon would do if I made it just crazy overpowered, and I wouldn't care if it broke the particular item, just so I could see it.
And maybe we could even have like a system that's super expensive in the game. Like maybe I want this also to be one linear, like single player, maybe like an open world style game where you could like farm for mods if you want.
Yeah.
But maybe what you could do is one of the expensive things that you could do, and it on your first playthrough you might be able to only do this like 4 or 5 times, is go to like a smithy, take your ultimate modded chassis and like make an actual mold out of it and turn it into a permanent gun. You know what I mean? And then that'll like take over one of your slots, and maybe you could only have one of those on at any given time. And then you could have like a selection of your favorite modded guns, and then maybe you could even share those throughout social media to like download other people's guns or like try those mods out and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I think it would be really cool if to download the weapons from other people and their mods, you had to earn them. So maybe those weapons would appear as enemies wielding them in the world. And if you got to beat them while they're using that weapon, then you get to take it and pick it up.
That sounds fun. I had a more boring solution where it's like you need the parts in your inventory to be able to download the gun.
I like the idea. I mean, the parts is fine. Yeah, the parts make sense though, because I don't think every time you would want to go and necessarily beat somebody or even travel to a place in the world where that enemy may be.
Yeah. And like, I feel like the parts, there's a limited amount, but maybe it could be like Diablo and Borderlands where the drop that you get is a random stat. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah.
Fired plus 6 damage could be on the same mod, but it could be fired plus 8 on a different one. You know what I mean? And maybe that's what changes, but all the things are like named and stuff. And maybe what it could also be is the wiring on the chip could also change. And so maybe one wire is closer, but another wire that's really good is further away. So like to optimize the wiring, it'll be different depending on same chip names.
So what does the character look like here?
Speaking of that, let's just talk about art style. What is it looking like? Like maybe I think it could kind of look kind of cartoony, like I'm thinking like Ratchet and Clank.
I don't mind that, but for some reason in my head I have this idea that you can take these chassis and plug them into vehicles and also plug them into like mechanical, I wouldn't say suits, but maybe more like exoskeleton, something super basic. And then those would be able to power the vehicles or mecha suits and then have those weapons inside of them and change how it functions.
I think for like the last chapter of the game,
nothing too crazy. Like I'm thinking like maybe a motorcycle and maybe one vehicle, like a normal car, not anything too extensive.
Yeah.
And then like a normal mech, it just has more durability, so you can fight maybe bigger waves of opponents.
How about this? For like the last portion of the game, the last chapter, there is like a couple missions where there is like a mech suit, and then you put your long gun chassis in there, and it makes a giant super powered version of whatever you put in. Right.
Yeah. So that's where I wanted to go with it, where it just keeps scaling up for the player.
Yeah.
Where they're like, holy shit.
As far as for the vehicle, maybe there could be like a Tron style bike as a mode of transportation, and that just has its own chassis on itself. And it could be kind of like a Days Gone situation where you're building up your bike as you go, and it gets cooler and cooler effects. So this one is way more cosmetic, but it also has mechanical differences depending on the chipset too. Like you could get better brakes, handling, acceleration, all that stuff, but you could also make it look a lot cooler.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's also part of the guns too. Like there could be like a effects chip that you find, and it's like a supplementary chip that you could only that you put in the side, and it's strictly for effects. And you could trigger it at different moments. Like when the hammer clicks, maybe that's when an effect could pop. Or when you shoot at the barrel, that's where like you could put it in a special spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that. So what is the character's motivation here? Because so far in my head, I picture them going from like factory to factory. Even if they work at them, they have to there has to be some kind of conflict, or you have to be using these weapons on someone.
Okay.
You know?
I'm getting inspiration because I just watched Legend of Korra. What if it's like this? You are, and also Final Fantasy VII, you are kind of like a undercover guy who's trying to overthrow these big gun corporations. And then you go in as an employee undercover to build up a thing. And then at like the crucial moment, you fucked up and then you have to run, and that's how the game starts. But yeah, it's literally you're just part of the secret organization that's going around trying to take down all the corporations that are making these guns, by also having to use their own technology.
So maybe you become more of a mercenary at that point, and that way there's maybe side quests that you get hired for to do. And maybe you meet other mercenaries who do similar things where they raid the factory for supplies.
I think, yeah, there could be different mercenaries out there in the wild.
Or another rebel faction too.
I think you're part of a core like group, kind of like the Fireflies in The Last of Us, or like the Avalanche in Final Fantasy VII, where it's not just your team, but it's like a big organization that is like a rebellion that's going against the government, and it's like organized and stuff, but you're a small sect and it follows you. And like,
yeah, what if it's just not even the government, but basically this huge, like I'm thinking this group of corporations that just have a chokehold on things, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine, like a monopoly system or something like that.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you and a group of like maybe 3 other friends, and those are like side characters that you interact with and travel with, but they don't like help you in fighting. Maybe they're like experts in different things. Like one of them is your cook. The other one is your survival, just getting from place to place.
Yeah.
thing.
So maybe you're making like a crew.
Yeah.
So one is like your navigator, and then one is like your cook. And then another one maybe is
I think
your
like,
doctor.
And one has to be like a general mechanic to make sure that all your stuff is looking good and clean and stuff. And yeah, maybe it could be kind of like have like a Suikoden type of thing where you're building a home base. Like you are your own hero in this. Like you're not going to have a party member or anything like that. But you go back to a base and you could like build it up every time you like recruit someone new. You could like bring them in and they have like an expertise in, I don't know, hydroponics or something, and growing food for your.
So they grow, food. So maybe there's recovery items.
Yeah.
In it for you.
So like you're kind of building a home base, going out into this open world, doing side quests, meeting other characters, and side quests could sometimes end up bringing that person to your home base and joining your cause to help you overthrow this giant corp.
All right, yeah. I like that. So this is a really weird question. So I can imagine the factories. I can imagine it looking very developed. There's going to be streets, of course. There's going to be concrete. What's the sky looking like? Is it all smoggy because of all this development people are doing? Like, is it just due to progress over everything? Have we made like a darker place? Maybe there's rain too, acid rain.
I think it's actually the opposite. These corporations, they try to put on like a good face, and so they're actually also working for like clean environment, so all their plantations don't like ruin the environment at all, and they actively clean it. So maybe the sky looks pristine and it's just super clean.
Wow.
It's like a fake utopia, but on the underside.
Now it makes me feel very anime-ish when you said a clean, pristine sky. I imagine like a character after a battle walking up a hill, his weapon slightly dragging, and he just looks up, and then it's like title screen.
Yeah, exactly. Like JRPG-esque.
Oh my gosh. Are we now this is sounding like dare I say it, that this would probably fill my Kingdom Hearts craving, because it's like pawing at a JRPG without going too hard into it, you know?
I think I want the wiring system to be pretty in depth. Like that is the new menu. You know how in RPG the menus are like super big?
I'm imagining like I hate to deep cut just because if people haven't played this game, they won't get it. But I'm imagining the grid system being something where it's almost like a slight little mini game, but still kind of heavy, like a Final Fantasy X upgrades system.
Exactly.
But for people out there who kind of just want to enjoy the game, I think it would be great too if we did a suggested setting where it suggests to you.
Oh, just like an auto build type of thing. Best damage.
Auto build, but I wanted to ask questions. I want to say something like a little bit further than auto build, because sometimes you never know what you're going to get, where it'll say auto build and it says, do you prefer attack, defense, or balance?
Yeah.
And then you can choose. And then it says, what's your favorite element? And you can choose. And then from there, it'll just go and auto build for
maybe
you.
Instead of that, what it could be is like, you know how in Persona there's the fuse by results?
Yes.
Maybe it's just like that. It just takes everything in your inventory that you own and just gives you the builds.
And then it gives you a very quick, like maybe 3-line summary saying you are a lightning warrior. Your stamina matches the greatest of warriors. Or, you know, it'll say something like you use frost to freeze your enemies and control them while you run around free. That way you kind of understand the way you should play these characters if you want.
Yeah.
Just because that way, you know, if you don't want to be into the RPG as much, you can kind of like, or you don't have the bandwidth to kind of deal with that, you can kind of just leave it off, but still be a little involved.
Right. And I think there should be so it does the builds for you. And I think there should be a secondary thing where it's like, do you want us to do the wiring for you, or do you want to do it yourself type of thing? And if you do it yourself, there's always a better optimized way. And then if the computer does it for you, it's randomized. You could get a good wiring or you could get a bad wiring.
Okay, yeah.
But a simple just making everything connect is easy. I think like anyone could do it really quickly. And maybe there's like a skill that you could get for your character that is like good at wiring. You automatically do okay wiring every single time if you just auto wire. But there's always like
a skill where you can't fail.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you do it manually, there's a chance you could like get a super optimal wiring system link, or
where
whatever.
Maybe there's a random chance that you could get a bonus to a certain stat, or it'll re-roll into a more powerful ability.
Exactly. Something exactly like that. I know I said this game is going to look like Ratchet and Clank, but I don't know. I'm thinking maybe more like, I don't know. I kind of see it looking more realistic, kind of. Maybe kind of like Final Fantasy VII Remake, or even like Nier Automata, where...
I'm cool with that. If that's the case, then... So this character, I want him to look cool, but I don't want him to be in the best of shape. I don't want him looking like Snow, where his abs are traditionally exposed. If I want this game to happen, I want it to have a unique style to the clothing and the way the characters dress and act, but I don't want it to be too traditional, if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I think in this
I want
universe,
to break from that.
Because of where the technology is and how everything is with like the clean energy vibe of this fake utopia dystopia. I think, yeah, the fashion should also be super unique, and we would have to build like a whole like culture, street culture, high culture of different a fashion that we kind of just make up that also fits maybe like how the chassis look, you know?
Yeah, and also due to the violence of this culture and the way weapons are used, characters are going to be covered up. There's going to be a lot of different layers and fashion to wearing protective clothing because of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
I would even think that it would be cool if the clothes were wired and maybe there was some electronic and glow effects in the clothing, almost like how we did in when you had invented Tron clothing and make this happen, where like similar to that, where there's some glow effects, or maybe there's dare I say it, we go even further where maybe there's some high-end clothing that you can pay for and it can connect to your chassis.
I think that I was going to go that far where I was like, maybe we could even freaking make your clothes just chassis and you could wire it in. Yeah. And then maybe like as you fire
all of a sudden
gun,
you could have a fighter chassis where it's not guns, but maybe you have like a jet boost and maybe hands that when you punch somebody, they explode. So upon contact, it causes a small explosion.
I don't want this to be like that violence. But yeah, no, I think
so. You just want it to be like Star Wars violence, where everyone gets cut clean and laser beams burn perfect holes, but no one bleeds because they're cauterized.
Just like people like falling over and shit.
Where I get what you mean. They fall over, they're not bleeding out, and then they slowly fade away into nothingness.
Yeah. Just like Final Fantasy VII Remake. But like maybe, yeah, you could have small upgrades like jetpacks and stuff like that. But I also want, like what you said, you could connect it to your gun. And this is like high-end clothing, right? Where every time you shoot a bullet, if you like have a submachine gun that shoots really fast, your suit like glows at the rate of fire of your gun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I could even see stuff where with the high-end ones, you could have something where there's a limited time thing where a visor comes up over your eyes from the clothing and then like it auto targets for you for a little bit.
Yeah, I like it. Like a targeting system.
Yeah, like there will be some clothing where you plug it in and it increases the effectiveness of every single bullet, or there's other ones where there's special abilities.
I imagine the fashion looking something like a cross between a Final Fantasy game and Mega Man Battle Network.
Yeah, that's definitely where I see it too. Now that you got me with the Battle Network, because I like that. Their clothing's all functional and they're all covered up like they're going to battle.
All right, let's talk about the music. What sounds are we hearing here?
This is, to me, it's going to be techno. It's going to be techno, maybe a little techno punk, maybe a little techno industrial, maybe, like different. There's going to be different filters of genres depending on bosses and fights and areas, but I feel like it's going to have its own like synthwave techno feel to it. It feels very futuristic, and with the clothing that I'm imagining and the fashion that we're trying to go for here, I feel like it's going to get a little unique and maybe a little weird sometimes.
I was thinking we go like Cowboy Bebop with it and make it like the jazziest soundtrack you've ever heard.
All right. It's just if we're going jazzy, the music imparts a certain personality on the game. So with jazzy music, it's going to impart a very like
a cool, suave,
cool, suave, smooth way to the way characters act. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, or
I think it could work out where maybe like we'll even have animations while you're shooting your gun with your like suit all like lit up and like glowing, you'll do like twirls and like will like make it look very like stylish, like kind of like Devil May Cry-esque, where you're doing like flips.
Devil May Cry with more lights, more effects. This is what I'm talking about.
Exactly. All right. How much are you willing to pay for this
game? $60.
You know, with the recent announcement with the 2K games, we could go $69.99.
We're not going to do that.
All right, $59.99 it is. All right, Alex, it's time to start your timer because it's time to name this game.
All right, here we go. Timer started.
Hotwire.
Yeah, that's perfect. Hotwire in 4 seconds.
Cool.
That's so good. That's a really good name. That's my favorite in a long time.
All right, Alex. Would you mind giving Hotwire a small description?
Hotwire is the third-person action game where you play as a character in a future where everything has become technological. Large factories cover the land, developing weapons for a never-ending war. You decide to break the cycle, take your own technology into your own hands, and start hotwiring.
All right. So I think we have a game here, Alex. What do you think? Would this be a game you would want to play? And is it fun?
Yeah, this would be a game I want to play. I like customization. I like style. I like futuristic things. I like having unique builds and kind of going in. This game would scratch multiple itches at once. It would be kind of like a JRPG itch mixed with a little bit of like a weapon building itch while still kind of showing off. So it kind of has Diablo and loot kind of going in too. It would be definitely something I'd be into. What about you?
Yeah, man, I think I would definitely love this game. Like the loot I feel like is more akin to like Borderlands, where it's just showering loot on top of you, you know? And I don't think there should be an inventory limit. I think you should just be able to pick up as much as you want and not even worry about it.
And you know what? We'll help you sort too. There's going to be tons of sorting options so you can figure it out.
Yeah, and we'll have like it's all sorted out what we think is the best and easiest way to navigate all this shit. But yeah, sorting galore. And also, I think this game will feel like how people felt Saints Row 4 felt compared to GTA 5, whereas this game is Saints Row 4 in this situation, and Cyberpunk 2077 is the GTA 5, where this is it's a AAA game for sure, but we're not taking ourselves too seriously, and it's just crazy fun action shit happening in this crazy cyberpunk-esque world, you know. Whereas Cyberpunk's coming out, and I feel like it's gonna have the same feel to them, but much different gameplay. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you know, I forgot Cyberpunk was on its way.
Yeah.
Maybe this was like our subconscious and trying.
Oh, I think
we're gonna make our own.
I think it's definitely me wanting Cyberpunk right now. But
that's hilarious.
With that, our 111th. I hate that word.
That was good. That was as good as you could get with that. 111th.
IP has gone gold. We hope you look forward to this experience that will probably never release. You could write to @poundgames@gmail.com if you have anything to patch into the game we created today. Also, give us feedback. We're still learning how to make the show better, and your feedback really helps. We have a Patreon. If you'd like to back our ideas, please head over to patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. Patrons receive episodes 2 days early and an extra podcast at the beginning, which caught the tail end of our conversation at the beginning of this episode. That's patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. If you liked our show, why not subscribe and give us all the stars on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, YouTube, and more. And if you ask for a review instead of reviewing our show, become your inner game critic and review Hotwire, the video game we just created. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Friday with another new IP. Again, my name is J.E.
And I'm Alex Gonzalez.
Thank you. And please remember that we are not game devs. Did you notice that this is Gunsmith the first original one.
It's much better.
Yeah, no, this is much better. I'm sad we lost Gunsmith, but this is a much better idea.